for the 12 people that are watching this, these are going to be my uncooked thoughts, okay? These are raw. These are uncooked spaghetti noodles inside of my brain because not only I've had a full day of work, I went to go see this movie and now I'm trying to film this video. Anyways, so today we're going to talk about everything to do with Undertone. I'm going to give you a summary of the movie, like much like I did for Shelby Oaks, so that if you haven't watched the movie, you can still enjoy my ramblings and ranting. And then I'm going to go into what I did like about the movie and what I didn't like about the movie, what I would change. But for the 12 of you that are watching, that is what is in store for us. I recently went to go see the movie Undertone, um, released by A24. I went into it kind of not knowing literally anything about the movie. I knew that it was about a podcast host. They host like a scary podcast, and then that there's kind of like some audio things going on. And so I was thinking, going into it, that's kind of like an interesting thing, right? Instead of the visual side of a horror experience, let's look into the auditory side of things, kind of like, harkening back to those days of, the 80s and 90s of listening to records backwards and the devil telling you to do things. And I thought that that was kind of like the launching point for it. And then this would be hopefully like some kind of interesting new take on those ideas. And I can tell you right now in a summary without any spoilers at all, it was disappointing. I don't think that it really said anything new or interesting. I don't think that it was particularly scary. I don't think that it gave itself almost too much time building unnecessary tension instead of giving any kind of tension that led to scary moments. And then the scary kind of sequence at the very end of the movie was not really enough. I am somebody that I always get scared by jump scares. And this was a movie where I feel like I did not jump at all, which for me, it's like one of those things where whether the movie is scary or not, whether I'm liking it or not, I'm going to jump if there's a loud noise or like a boom gotcha. Like, even if it's one of those fake out boom gotchas, it doesn't matter. Like, I have a very strong startle response. I will jump. And there was no point in this movie where I jumped. If you're somebody who also has a strong startle response and you're like, oh, I just want to watch a movie where I'm not going to have any jump scares, I guess that would be my review. This might be the movie for you because it is a lot of very slow build up and the jump scares are not based around visual cues most of the time. There is one point at the end, I guess if you have a very strong startle response, you might experience a jump scare. I didn't, but for the most part, like a lot of the scares are really rely on that audio. And something I didn't think about going into this is I am also not a very good like auditory person. Like, I think I have a lot of issues like kind of processing people talking sometimes if I can't see their mouths moving. It's hard for me to sometimes like uh if I'm on the phone with somebody and I can't see their mouth moving, it can be really hard for me to kind of process what they're saying. I think also that might have also, maybe to be fair, detracted some of my scare factor, like some of my fear from the movie, because a lot of it is based on like listening to audio and then it saying something like that's supposed to be scary. And I was just kind of hearing like a bunch of like nonsense words, and so, then the nonsense words would turn into like scary voice nonsense words. And it was really hard for me to process what it was saying until the person would write out what it was saying and then play it back again. And then it was one of those where, okay, now I can hear it now that I know that what it's supposed to say. I don't really understand at its core what this movie was trying to do. I don't understand what it was trying to say. I've seen so many TikTok clips of this film, and I was telling my friend before, I would see an ad saying this movie changes the way that we look at horror movies, and I would scroll because I was like, I can't handle it if it's gonna talk it up and then I'm gonna go and it's gonna be really basic, and I'm like, I'm over that. Just felt really like nothing trying to be something. And I think just the past few movies that I've gone to see, from Shelby Oaks to Wuthering Heights to now this movie that I've decided to make a video about, I really do think that that is part of what my issues with them have been, is that they are movies that are presenting something that is like very basic, very part of kind of like the cultural norms that we are expected to have, and they keep saying, trying to present it as something revolutionary when it is just something that is very hollow. And I hate that. It's like, I don't know who this movie was for. I don't know who would have enjoyed this movie. Not to say that you can't like it or you can't enjoy it. I just legitimately mean I honestly don't know who this movie was marketed for. I don't think it was marketed for me as someone who likes horror movies and likes kind of like horror movies that have like a specific kind of like vision or world building or characterization that is very interesting to follow. I don't think it was built for people who are like very serious horror fans, because if you've watched if you've read any creepy pastas, if you've watched any horror movies from the early 2000s, like you've seen this movie before a million times, and you've probably seen it done better, or at least you've seen it like when it was at its heyday if you're my age or older. And I don't think that it was made for a younger generation either, that would be kind of picking up on this kind of like nostalgic almost like era of horror that was like very like physical media based, of like listening to recordings or watching video, that kind of like found footage horror movie. I don't think that it would appeal to a younger generation either, because it didn't really read that way. It really read like somebody was had this in their back pocket from 2002 and just now got the funding to do it. Like that is what it felt like to me. And if that's the case, I appreciate them sticking to their vision, right? Like I appreciate that they were like, I have had this in my mind since 2002 and I just really want to make it into a movie. But like I think that that was where this was meant to be. I think it was meant for the internet. And I think it was meant for the internet in a time that no longer exists. Unfortunately, I think it just was weirdly outside of its time. And I don't think it was ahead of its time. Unfortunately, I think it was behind. So without further ado, part one, Unhinged Recap. Undertone is a movie about a podcast host, okay? We have our main girl. Her name is Evie. She is currently staying in her mother's house because her mother is dying. Her mother is on hospice, and so the movie opens up and it is very like sound oriented again, with like breathing, heavy breathing sounds of her mother laying in a hospital bed, making these like kind of not yet gurgly death rattly, but we're getting there kind of sounds. And her mother has been ill for a long time and it's not looking good, right? Like it's just a matter of how long she's going to be there. And so Evie is kind of on her own in this situation. She is basically alone in this house with a dying woman. The only kind of connection she has to the outside world is her shitty boyfriend, Darren, and her podcast co host, Justin. So we're immediately brought into this world of the movie, which is very like quiet, I will say. And it is very like we are very I was very focused in the movie on the sounds that we were hearing, because I was thinking, the audio side of this, right? I was like, I really want to lock in. Okay, I want to lock in and I want to see if there's going to be any hidden messages or like interesting things that they do with the audio. That's where I'm locked in. Unfortunately, I will say there were people behind me. I will movie shame them, that were talking the whole time, and it was a nightmare.
You preach theater etiquette to my kids. Put your phone away. You preach theater etiquette. Put it away.
There's a lot of like very slow shots of like tea kettles and like drawings on the wall and that kind of thing, right? Like it is very slow, it is very quiet, because as the podcast co-host says, you don't have to be afraid of the dark, you have to be afraid of the silence. So I was like, okay, there's got to be something in the silence, or like I don't know. I again, I had a full day of work and it's reporting season. So my brain was not cooking off. It was not firing off the conspiracy theories like we were Shelby Oaks, because also in the back of my head I was like, okay, girl, you got burned in Shelby Oaks.
Time travel. They're gonna get locked in a time loop, baby.
Okay, so try to keep those conspiracy theories, keep them locked up tight. Keep them locked up tight. Anyways, so there's a lot in the beginning that is like we're in the world of this house, and the world building is okay that Evie is isolated. She's alone, and sh and it feels very like claustrophobic. Like her world is this house. It is the only thing that we see in the entire movie. And I did like that idea because it was like, okay, there are things going on outside of the house, right? Like there's a point where she leaves the house to go to a party. We don't see that. We don't see that. We don't see the boyfriend. We don't see anything. The only thing that we see is the house, because to her, like her whole life is being kind of like weighed down by her mom and her mom dying. So my brain, I was really interested to see where this would go at first, because I was like, okay, I think that there is something here with this like eldest daughter, only daughter, taking care of her mother, and like the weight of that and the guilt of that, and like not being able to, like being in this weird in between place of not being able to live your life because you're also like bound, be decent, because you're also bound by the obligations that you have to this woman who has like given you life, and now you are the caretaker seeing her to the other side, and I thought that I was like, there is something there, I think there is something kind of interesting about that dynamic and like how it can weigh on you. And the other thing that she has is this podcast with her co-host Justin lives in London. I don't know if they've ever seen each other before. I don't know how they started this podcast together, because, viewer, none of that gets answered in the movie. We don't know anything about Justin other than that he's there, and he lives in England and he works. That's all we got. But they host this spooky podcast together that they film for some reason at 2 a.m. to 3 a.m. to account for the time change. Justin and Evie have this podcast called Undertone, and in it they kind of review these like spooky internet like hoaxes and videos and found footage and spooky stories. Some of them they get from viewers calling in at 2 a.m. And then others are like videos that they watch on the internet, or like things that viewers will send in to them to talk about, like scary stories, urban legends, that kind of thing. And so their previous one was a video that you play and you hear the sound, and then everybody kills themselves after hearing the sound. Like that is their type of video. And before the podcast like actually starts filming, like they'll have like cute little banter of like, hey, how are you doing? How's your mom? Are you okay? Will you come see me in England? And Evie's like, no. I was like, you should go see that boy in England because he's a sweetheart and I'm rooting for him. I was also rooting for him to be evil later on. So they have that kind of banter, and then they'll kind of be like, okay, I got to get into character for the podcast. And Evie is the like logical, like, okay, this is all like, you know, um, just a hoax. None of this is real. And then Justin is the like, oh my God, I can't believe we shouldn't listen to this anymore. I can't believe that this is happening. And that is their dynamic that they have. The setup of the movie is that they have been sent these videotapes, or not videotapes. They've been sent these phone calls. Yeah. Speak, Umber. Speak. They've been sent these audio recordings. Okay, and there are 10 of them. And it's from this weird email address. I don't remember what it was. And there are weird letters that are like atonement or something. Again, don't remember what they were, because I did just watch this movie and I only watched it one time. And I am not an investigative journalist. But it says some weird words, and there's 10 of them. okay, there's 10 audio recordings, and the message that the person sent this in says, "Be careful listening to all 10." And it is like very typical as somebody who grew up in the like early 2000s and like early 2010s as a kid, and like, getting like an email address, like chain emails were a huge thing, and a lot of them would be kind of like that, like,
Don't open this because it's cursed, or send this to 10 people, or else your family will die.
or like it was a huge thing. And so they start listening to the phone messages, and it's like these two people, Mike and Jess, and they're boyfriend girlfriend. And Mike starts recording because he's like, my girlfriend Jess, she is talking in her sleep and she doesn't believe me, haha. So I'm going to record her. And they record her, and she's singing, London Bridge is falling down, falling down. Just exactly like that. So she sings her little song, and then then they're like, oh haha, okay, she was singing in her sleep. Yeah, got her. And then you go to the next recording, and the next recording is like she's talking in her sleep, but she says something weird, and she says like or something, and then you're like, "That's weird." And then you hear the song like playing, and they're like, "Why are they playing the song?" Basically, the point of the videos, they get to this point where they're like, "Okay, that's weird that the she's singing this nursery rhyme," and then Justin's like, "Oh, isn't it interesting that nursery rhymes are actually like full of all like based on all of these awful things?" And they do their little Google searching. This movie relies heavily on a Google search and flashing up random words on the screen. I don't know why that's what we're doing. I don't So they get out their little Googler, they Google London Bridge, and Justin's like, "Did you know that London Bridge was based on this queen Elizabeth of Provence or something like that? I don't remember the name. And she built the bridge, but all of her children died, and she was like, I have to keep sacrificing babies and burying them under the bridge or bad things will happen. And isn't that spooky?" Uh, okay, but then Evie Evie says, she's like, "Okay, yeah, whatever. Like I'm sure that you could look up any nursery rhyme and they would say the same thing. There's probably conspiracies about all of them." And she's like, "My mom used to sing Baba Black Sheep to me all the time." And I forgot to mention at the beginning of the movie, she's singing Baba Black Sheep to her mom. So it's like a little like, oh, like the daughter becomes the caretaker. Your mother sings to you as a child, and then you sing to her as an older woman, you get it. And um but anyways, and she was like, "Yeah, my mom used to sing Baba Black Sheep to me when I was a kid. I'm sure that you could find something about that too, Justin." And Justin does, and I don't quite remember what the story was. It was something about sheep, and then the sheep, they eat the sheep and the children. And so then she says, "Okay, so all of the kids' stories, like, are they all just about like all of these horrible things? Like, what is that about? That's very weird." And Justin says, he's like, "Well, maybe it's more like, you know, less about the like specific horrible things, and it's like, okay, adults in your life, like they can do bad things like that then children are kind of subjected to and have to navigate." And I was like, okay, is that going to be the theme of the movie? Because we've got this daughter who is taking care of her mother and um is becoming a caretaker. Is there going to be some kind of like family secret of like maybe like reason why she would be resentful, or like having to deal with like she had this like negative relationship with her mother and now she's having to overcome it, like, as a child she had to deal with all of these things, and then now that she's an adult she's having to come to terms with like maybe the things that she as a child was just like, oh, this is a nursery rhyme, like maybe I'm creating strategies for myself to cope, like a nursery rhyme, like then looking back, maybe they were actually not as like nice as you thought, or and you're having to like process them in a different way as an adult, and then also saying goodbye to this person in your life, like that kind of thing. Again, maybe that was a lot to expect out of a horror movie, but they did say that. They did say that right? Like, when somebody verbalizes something in a movie that I feel like could potentially be, like, them, like, kind of, like, hanging a light on what they want the point of the movie to be, then for me, I'm like, "Okay, I'm expecting them to see that be reflected in the themes of the movie," and I don't feel like that's a very unrealistic expectation to have. Like, yes, maybe I tend to take it and I'm like, "Shwoo," run with it. But if you're not going to talk about it, you don't gotta say it. You don't have to try to be deep about it. So they've listened to the first three of these tapes, and they listen to them backwards at one point, because sometimes it's like when you listen to things backward, it tells you messages, and so they listen to London Bridge backward, and Justin is like, "Oh my god, can you hear that? It's like Mike kill all." Over and over again, and the boyfriend's name is Mike, so that's weird, right? And Evie's just kind of like, I don't hear that. And I also, at this point, I was like, okay, also same, Evie, I don't hear that. I have such a hard time processing things like that auditorially without people's mouths moving, which I should have anticipated would be a problem for me in this movie. That if it, like, having to, like, identify a message from, like, nonsense backwards words, that's never going to be something that I'm going to be able to do. It's really hard for me. And so I didn't know what they were saying until Justin or Evie would be like, okay, I think I hear this, or they write it down. And then they listen to Baba Black Sheep backwards. Um, Evie kind of can't understand. She also cannot understand what they're saying. And Justin's like, maybe if you slow it down, you can figure it out. So he sends her the audio, and she's going to look at it later. Evie goes to the next scene. It's like very, like, spooky and dark, right? Like, after the podcast, and you're like, oh, something happened when they were listening to the things. And so Evie, we kind of flash to Evie. A lot of this movie is about Evie and her mom and kind of caretaking her mom. So we have these scenes where she is, like, talking with her podcast host, and they're watching the videos, and she's kind of locked in with these, like, noise canceling headphones. And then any other time we are focused on her being alone in this house with her mom, who is just kind of laying in bed. And so in the morning, Evie, we see her run to the bathroom and throw up. And again, and I did not think, my brain did not jump to pregnant. Maybe that's just because I was being hopeful that she wouldn't be pregnant, or because it made me fearful of where this movie was going to go. But yeah, so she runs to the bathroom and vomits, and then goes to take care of her mother, and, like, the hospice lady comes in and is like, she just is a matter of days, and you're waiting and listening for a death rattle and all of this stuff. And then later Evie goes and calls the doctor and is like, can you set up an appointment for me, because and the doctor's like, "Sure. Oh, sure. What for?" She's like, "A pregnancy test." And I'm like, "Girl." So she goes to get a pregnancy test, and I'm just going to go ahead and tell you right now, she is in fact pregnant. And she initially asks, the doctor's like, "Do you want me to," he calls her and is like, "The test was positive. Do you want me to refer you to an OBGYN?" And she's like, "No, I want to explore my options." And I was like, "Okay, that makes sense," because I'm still at the point where I'm like, okay, well, in this movie, she's, like, being forced to be a caretaker. She's isolated and alone. Her boyfriend is shitty. So maybe, like, part of it is she's having to come to terms with, like, I don't want to be another, like, I can't keep being a caretaker. Like, the toll it's taking on me is too much. And, like, having to kind of figure out for herself what that means for her. And, like, that's where we're going to go with it. Um, it wasn't. Again, maybe that's too much to hope for or expect, but it was where my mind went, because I was like, okay, with the themes of this movie, she's having to be a caretaker for her mother. It sounds like they've had, like, a kind of weird, like, a strange relationship, because she keeps playing this voicemail that her mother sent, where her mother is saying, like, "I just wanted to ask if you were going to come, like, if you would come to mass. Like, I haven't seen you in a while, and I've been praying for you." Like, she keeps playing that message. So it's like, okay, they're seems like they were maybe estranged, maybe had some kind of like differences or like separation between them or whatever. And so that was kind of where I thought it was going with the pregnancy thing. So I was very annoyed when I heard that she was pregnant because I was like, I don't know that this I had a suspicion. By I've been burned so bad by Shelby Oaks and that freaking demon baby, okay? So I looked at Jorah and I was like, "Are we gonna get another fucking demon baby?" Like I was like, "Is this gonna be another?"
Don't you want a baby?
I thought that that was what I was like, I had just had that fear lodged deep in my soul that that was what we were gonna get from this movie, and I was trying not to. I was in denial. I was like, "Please God, not another demon baby, please God." So she's pregnant. Yay. She doesn't want it. Yeah. She goes to this party with Darren, her shitty boyfriend, who is like blowing her phone up while she's just trying to take care of her mom. And she leaves her mom, who is literally on her deathbed. Anyway, so she goes to this party and she says that she's only going to be there for a couple hours, but she stays out all night and comes back, and her mom has, of course, somehow gotten herself out of bed and is on the ground, like has fallen and just is like blow. And so she has to drag her mom back into bed, and she's like, "I'm so sorry, I shouldn't have left," all this stuff. Obviously feels very bad about it because something bad happened when she was gone. So she and her podcast host also continue watching these videotapes, and they are progressively getting weirder and weirder. We're getting now, like, in her sleep, the woman is talking and she's saying "Gabashapapapa, gabashapapa," and they're trying to figure out what that means. And I turned to Jorah. In this moment, I turned to Jorah because it's supposed to be very scary, right? Like she's saying these words and you're trying to figure out what they mean, and then there's like a creepy, like undertone voice underneath it of the demon. And I turned to Jorah and I was like, all I could hear, Jorah, is
Free Shavakadu.
Hey guys, look, get to Del Taco. They got a new thing called free Shavakadu.
that was what every time the demon language spoke, my brain would just went we're at free Shavakadu time. And they eventually figure out that she's saying, um, come in Abazu, which again, I was like, you mean
Free Shavakadu.
and Abazu, Justin just somehow happens to know immediately, not suspiciously at all. I was suspicious. I was like, how the fuck did you know that, Justin? Are you maybe Abazu? Are you maybe Free Shavakadu, Justin? Because Justin immediately knows that all of the demon lore. He's like, oh my god, Abazu, she's this ancient Christian demon who she takes babies and like makes women miscarry and she eats the babies or whatever demons do with babies. I don't know, but she hates babies and women and kills them. And he somehow knows all of that while our girl Evie is just sitting there on like Googling Wikipedia. She is Google Wikipediaing Free Shavakadu. They're listening to this woman. She's saying, "Free Shavakadu, free Shavakadu, free Shavakadu," right? She's asking Shavakadu to be freed. And as she's listening to the tape, Evie is also saying "Free Shavakadu" over and over, right? She's got her headphones in and she's trying to understand what they're saying, and she's saying "Free Shavakadu, free Shavakadu, free Shavakadu." I looked over at Jorah and we both were like, "Oh my god, this is Shelby Oaks with the fucking demon baby." Okay, we're back in, we're trapped. There will be no freeing of Shavakadu. We are in Shavakadu's eternal torment, be- being plagued by demon babies. Yeah, and so as soon as I heard that it was a demon that like causes miscarriages or whatever, I was like, this is some bullshit. Like this is gonna be another, don't you want a baby? Or don't aren't you a horrible woman because you don't want a baby? I was like, we're going one of two directions and I don't like either of them. And so we have that demon lore, and there's a lot of scenes where we're flashing to just like pictures of Virgin Mary, and she will hear her mom like praying like Hail Marys, and then she'll go up and like run to her mother's room, and her mom is not praying, or like the light will be on and like her mother will be doing nothing, or she'll open the drawer and there'll be a picture of a mother like with a murdered baby, and she's just closes the door back and doesn't ask any questions about it. So there's just a lot of scenes where it really drags on, And if I sound like I'm not going in order, it's because I'm not, because none of these scenes are like tied together. They are just kind of like these moments of things that happen. And it is very long and drawn out because you are just in this house the entire time, just watching Evie. And it is so quiet. And it is like, and then she'll like stare at the picture of Virgin Mary for 2 minutes. Or she will find this like creepy little statue next to her mom's bed, and she'll like go and put it in the closet, and then it'll wind up back on her mom's bed. And so you are in kind of this slog, honestly, of just like watching Evie stare at various objects around her room, and there are like subtle noises in the background of like water dripping or whatever. And and the only other thing happening in these scenes is Evie coming to terms with being pregnant. And by that, I mean, again, staring at a picture of Virgin Mary and then going to her mother's bedside and being like, I want to name my daughter Mary because you used to say Hail Marys a lot, and I want to name her Mary. But I don't think that'll be a good mama. I don't think that'll be a good mama. When she said that, Jorah and I literally like burst out laughing, and I kind of wanted to gag just because I don't think I'll be a good mama. And she thinks that she won't be a good mom because, oh my God, I can't even get into it. I can't even get into it. She thinks she won't be a very good mom, and is scared, 'cause she's got a shitty boyfriend. She'd basically be doing it all on her own, blah 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 blah. So she goes from potentially wanting to look at her options to now we are like 2 days later, and she's like, I'm keeping the baby and I'm moving out on my own after my mom dies, basically. Which is fine. Like, that's her decision to do. I didn't love it just because I think there was no like, because it is so like isolated, and we literally only see Evie in the movie. She's the only person that we see. Everybody else is just voices on a phone, or voices on a phone that we hear. There's not a lot of room for her to have a lot of like character growth. So for her to have kind of like that progression, I didn't really understand where it was coming from. I was like, and I was also again kind of confused because I was like, well, okay, this is not like Shelby Oaks where they're wanting to have the baby because demon man is telling them, like getting into their mind, succubizing them, telling them that they want to have this baby. This is more, it should be that she maybe wanted to have the baby, and then the demon is in her mind telling her that she's not good enough to have the baby. And so I was kind of confused because I was like, I felt like her not wanting to have the baby came from this very genuine place of being in that situation of like having to be the caretaker, being on your own, like being very young and kind of a shitty situation in general. Like I think that's a very normal thing to like want to think about your options, or like at least kind of come to terms with things before you move forward. And like there's a point where she randomly is like, she finds out she's pregnant and she's like having a hard time with it, and then randomly she's going and staring at a liquor cabinet. I thought she was possessed. I thought she was staring at the liquor cabinet because she was possessed. And no, she's staring at the liquor cabinet because apparently also she's an alcoholic. And so she pours herself a drink, and then right before she starts the podcast call with Justin, and then Justin somehow knows immediately that she was drinking and was like, have you been drinking again? I don't want you to be backsliding. I don't know, it just really didn't land for me, and I was also just very confused by it because it came out of nowhere. And I don't think it was necessary. I think it was so dumb to add in there. And then Justin immediately, I locked onto it because I was like, Justin immediately somehow knew that she was taking a drink. And as soon as he was on the call and heard her taking a sip, he was like, are you drinking again? But so when he said, are you drinking again? I was like, oh snap. Okay. Nope. Abazu is not this fucking demon. Okay. Free Shavakadu? No. You know who's Shavakadu? Justin is Shavakadu. That is where my brain went because I was like, how does he know that she's drinking again? Is it just because they're podcast co-hosts, and they know each other and they've been through a lot of tough times together and they're friends, and she's going through a hard time, so it's like, a normal suspicion that you would ask as a person? No. Okay? He is a demon. He is not really even there Because at this point I was like, I don't even know if they've ever met in person before. So I was like, he's not even there at all, okay? He has been talking to her this whole time and he doesn't even exist. He's a demon and he's speaking to her and he's trying to get her to listen to the videotapes and say free Shavakadu a bunch of times. So that way he can get inside of her life so that
He is Shavakadu, and he will be freed. He will be freed, okay? And maybe they'll fall in love.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. So when he said, "Are you drinking again?" I really thought that it was going to be one of those things where it's like, okay, slowly over time you start to realize that Justin isn't real. Either it's like a hallucination that Evie's having, or he's a demon that is like trying to get like being her podcast host, but trying to get her to listen to these videotapes so that she can so that he can possess her. Like I was like, I love that. I love that for for Shavakadu having a business plan, right? Like it's hard times in hell. Okay, he had to get monetized. He was like, I gotta get sponsorships. Okay, if I'm gonna make it outside of hell. And what is hell if not a man with a microphone and a podcast? Do you see what I'm saying? Or just I'm gonna watch this back and it's not gonna make any sense. I really thought that Justin was gonna be the demon. But he wasn't. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. It is just it is Shavakaru is just a baby hating lady. So we've been living in this world, right, where Evie is taking care of her mom. Her mom is not getting any better, slowly getting worse, and spooky things are starting to happen. There's a couple really good, creepy grandma moments. We love a creepy old lady. Okay, there is one thing I will say. I love a creepy old lady, and every time that creepy, I was waiting for the creepy old lady to have her moment. And there is a moment when Evie's like listening. She's got her like sound canceling headphones on and like takes them off, and then it's nighttime. The mom is um like standing and like screams or whatever. And then there's moments where he opens the closet door and the mom is like in the background, and like the mom like sits up, and then when she goes to turn around the mom's like laid back down. Those were what I was wanting. I was like, okay, give us a creepy old lady. Like, let her have her moment. This poor old woman actress, like, she was giving her heart, okay? She was breathing so creepily this whole movie. And I was like, give her something to do. Like, crawl down backwards down the stairs or something, like vomit up buckets of blood, anything. Like, let her have her moment. That's what I would want to be doing as a creepy old lady. If I'm possessed, at least let me have a little showmanship with it. Anyways, so we've had a few moments of that. Okay, and we're building up, and we obviously are getting to the point where it's like they've released one episode of them listening to the first 8 tapes of these, and they say, call us back a week from now when we're filming our podcast live from 2 to 3 a.m., obviously, because when else would we film? And let us know if you know who Jess and Mike is, and if you know anything about Free Shavakadu. They start their podcast, okay? They start getting calls in, and the first call is this guy, and he's like, and Justin's like, oh, that's interesting, he's from your area code, Evie. And he's like, I do know Jess and Mike, they lived uh down the road from me in Westminster or whatever her place was named, and her town was named, and it was so sad because they both died. And then they get another call on the other side of the country. She's like, I don't have anything about Jess and Mike, but I do have something about I also have a creepy story. This woman who lived in the apartment below me, and she went crazy. And then the last person calls in, and they're like, "Oh my god, this is crazy." They're like, "Maybe we shouldn't listen to the last one. Maybe we shouldn't listen to the last one." So they listen to number 9, and a bunch of spooky stuff starts to happen. Like, you do get kind of this like audio of again, the like free Shavakadu, and then you hear the demon go.
Free Shavakadu!
And Jess and Mike, they've been like the couple from the recordings, they've kind of slowly been getting more and more scared. There's a baby crying in the background that they hear, and they're kind of like more and more distressed. And then you listen to this, and it's very scary. And then Justin is like, we shouldn't listen to the last one. We shouldn't listen to the last one. Me in my brain, I was like, okay, but what if Justin is telling her not to listen to the last one, but it's really because Justin wants her to listen to the last one because he's a demon? even. I knew at this point that was not what was going to happen, but I was like, listen, if she wasn't pregnant, that is what I would assume was happening, that Justin was a demon and he was like trying to get her to listen to it.
We get to the point where now it's time to listen to the 10th message, okay? And Justin is like, he's like, no, don't listen to the message. We should just turn it off now. We should just turn it off. And Evie, this whole time, every single time that they have been listening to these audio tapes, her demeanor kind of visibly changes and she looks very afraid. And then as soon as they end, she acts like she is kind of like this very like logical, rational person and is like, it's all just a hoax, it's not real. And so that is what she is saying now as well. And to me, this was another part that was very frustrating in the movie because I think I understand, like, they mentioned several times like, oh, I'm just playing a character. And they briefly mentioned that like the woman wouldn't remember what she was saying when she woke up, but she would remember like when she heard it back. But she remembered also outside of those times, right? Like after she heard herself say it back, then she was afraid and knew what was going on. So I didn't really understand why Evie, who is supposed to be this person who is like being presented as being very logical and rational, why she was not taking any kind of like steps beyond, you know, listening to Baba Black Sheep and discovering that when you play it backwards, it says they like to lick all the blood, or like doing guided meditations and then hearing things about dead babies floating in a river. I don't understand why she wasn't taking any initiative steps to like try to figure out what was happening to her, or like trying to, you know, maybe battle with like that things are a little bit weird. Because when you find a picture that either you had to have drawn or your mother had to have drawn of a woman with a stabbing a baby, like, but obviously, so we get to this point, right? All of that to say, Evie and Justin now are like, okay, we're just gonna listen to number 10 on their podcast that they're recording live. And as they listen, they hit play on 10. I'm trying to remember which of two things happened. I think that happens first. So they get this call from this other woman named Abby, and she is like sobbing and is like basically like, I'm no good, I'm all wrong, all this stuff. And you hear a baby crying in the background, and she basically like she's having a mental breakdown and is going to do obviously something bad to herself because she is like losing her mind, like her baby won't stop crying. And so you're like, okay, yeah, she's going to end the life of her baby or herself. And on the audio call, it's going to be very horrifying. And Evie tries to convince her. She's like, you are good enough. You are good enough. Like, you are good. And she just keeps saying that over and over again. And Abby's like, how do you know? And Evie, at this point, this is like her big dramatic character reveal moment, is like, I know you're good, but because I'm all wrong. She's like, I killed my mother.
My mom's dead.
There was a moment when I was like, okay, if she actually like did kill her mother, like at the beginning of the movie, and we didn't know because it's like one of those things where like she's just shoving things aside and maybe is like seeing things that aren't there or like something, I was like, okay, if that's what it is, I could be okay with it, and because then it would be better than Demon Baby, you know? I didn't really want that to be the story, but I was like, honestly, at this point, anything is better than this fuck-ass demon baby plot. Anyways, and she's like, I killed my mother. And you're like, what do you mean you killed your mother, Evie? She says she killed her mother because her mom, when she got sick, asked her to come and pray with her every single night. And Evie didn't do that because she said she was busy. And then her mom stopped being able to walk and talk and got really sick and is now going to die. And it was her fault because she didn't pray. Now the message is, if you don't pray for your mom, you're gonna get haunted by a demon. Like, what are we doing? What are we watching? What are we listening to? It was so bad. Such a bad reveal. Like, it should have just not even been there. Honestly, we didn't need it. at all. And again, in those moments when it's like, if this is something that is being vocalized in the movie, in a movie in which there's not a lot of like things verbally, like verbal interactions between people, right? Like we have verbal interactions between the podcast hosts and then a couple of verbal interactions between Evie and the doctors and Evie and her shitty boyfriend, and that's it, right? And we're not seeing anyone. It's all about what they say. So when I'm supposed to be focusing in apparently on listening, right, to what people are saying, I'm getting pissed off because I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? Why is this being presented to me as this is her character flaw in the final moments of the movie, and we're not even going to address it? Because, dear viewer, do you know what happens next? Do you think that we get some kind of like heartwarming moment where she realizes that she didn't kill her mom and she is a good daughter because she was there with her mom through the end, or whatever? No. None of that gets addressed. We literally brush past that. She says it, and then Abby starts laughing. And like then things go cuckoo banana pancakes. Okay, it goes balls to the wall real crazy at the very end of the movie. And basically what happens is Abby starts laughing. They hang up. They're like, oh my God, that was weird. Justin is like, we shouldn't listen to this video. We shouldn't listen to this video. I think we should just hang up and we should just leave it alone, basically. And Evie is like, no, we gotta listen to it. We've come this far. We gotta listen to it. Knowing, which is so stupid because I'm like, knowing what they know, like, why would she be wanting this? And again, I was like, I wish that we had some kind of like tie-in to this part of her personality into the plot of the movie, and it being more about like her not wanting to deal with things and not recognize things. And it's like now in this moment when she's recognizing and dealing with things, like she's still not, because she still says it's just a hoax, it doesn't really matter. And I'm like, okay, but you fucking know that it's not a hoax, like, and that weird things have been happening to you. So either Justin is like fucking with you, or like this is a real legit bad situation that you should not listen to this. Anyway, so obviously they're going to listen to tape number 10, and in tape number 10 there's again a lot of babies crying, free Shavaka doing, and then the tape says Justin's name at one point. It also and then it freezes, and then they get another call, and the call just keeps saying, I want to speak to Mary, I want to talk to Mary, I want to talk to Mary, I want to talk to Mary. And you're like, oh God, it's the baby. And again, I will say, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for who I am, but if I would be lying if I said that in that moment when they said, can I speak to Mary, I was hoping, I knew that the movie was about to end because we had been trapped in this theater for so damn long, but I was hopeful that maybe to say it, I was hopeful in that moment when they were saying, I need to speak to Mary, I need to speak to Mary. And when that lady, when Jess said Justin's name, or someone, like a woman said Justin's name on the tape, I was so hopeful. I felt my spirit lift for a moment because I was like, oh my God, it might actually be time travel, because it might be, what if it's Evie and she is like calling, like it's her, like this is what is about to happen to her as she's losing her mind, right? Like over this baby that she's named Mary, and then like is saying Justin, because there's all these audio clips like clipping in of her like saying random things that she said like through the whole movie. So I was like, oh my God, maybe it is time travel.
Time travel. They're gonna get locked in a time loop, baby.
Justin is yelling at Evie to like get out of the house, turn off the phone. But Evie can't really understand that because there's so much other things going on. Audio wise, there's like a red light that comes on the TV. It's like and it's like frozen on a frame of like one of the scary videos that they watched in an earlier episode of the podcast. That was at the beginning of the movie. And her mother is like not in bed anymore, and the bed is like perfectly made, and the little creepy statue of, it's supposed to be Mother Mary, but it's a creepy Mother Mary, so I think it's actually supposed to be Free Shavakadu. And yeah, and then and then the mom at the very end, like you get like a couple of like really loud like jumps to like her mom screaming, and then her mom is like standing in the bathroom and then starts to like supernaturally like hover backwards, and then the screen goes completely black and you start to hear like a bunch of noises all at once, and you're kind of waiting, you're just sitting there in the blackness like listening, and you can hear Justin screaming and you can hear Evie screaming, and you can't, and then there's like a lot of thumping, and then you hear
Free Shavakadu!
and then a bunch of thumps, and then the movie ends. And you don't know what happens to Evie. You don't see any of it. You just hear visually, which I liked the idea of, but I kind of wish that it had come after like a moment where maybe we saw a little bit more. Like, I know that the whole point was the audio, but I honestly like don't think that the audio was used cleverly enough for it to be very scary, and I don't think that it was effective as kind of like the climax of the movie.
I know that's another common horror trope to end these movies, kind of like with you not really knowing what happened, or like the ending wanting it to be kind of that like shocking twist. But I think for me, these have just not really landed because it doesn't really seem like there honestly is a point for them to end that way. I don't really feel like they necessarily earned that ending. I was honestly kind of expecting the ending to be that then Justin would be wrapping up their podcast and explain like, and then I never saw my friend again and she died, or "Well, this is going to be my last episode, like I didn't even want to post it, but I felt like I had to wrap everything up and then it ends, like that was kind of what I was expecting. And then when it didn't happen, I was like, okay, I mean, that's fine because I can infer what happened. Something bad probably happened to her. Was not looking good for Evie, I guess. I don't know what would have happened to her because just literally all you see is the grandmother moving backwards and then everything goes black and there's some thumping. And I was hoping that we would maybe see a demon or like see Evie. We're promised a lot of imagery of like very dark thing of like babies being eaten, babies being murdered, babies drowning, licking up the blood. I thought that we were going to get an image of her like licking up the blood or something, like we're given very like unsettling like verbal words of what could happen, what Abazu's goals are. I guess, but we don't end up actually seeing that or even really like hearing it. Honestly, if we'd heard like, I don't know, like sickening thumps and then like a slurp and laughing or something. Like something where I'm like getting the vision of like, okay, she's probably in there licking up blood. And that's pretty gross. Um and I laughed at the end and the entire theater laughed at the end. We were all kind of in the same boat of like, oh my god, what it wasn't a laugh in like a that kind of relief almost of like, oh, it's over. It was like a laugh of like, of course it ended that way. Like, how could we have not seen that it was going to end that way? This is just a creepy pasta. First off, we can start off with what I liked. So I really liked that this movie, in theory, tried to go. I liked that it was planning to go for something different with the audio. I think that is an interesting idea in and of itself. I don't think that it carried it far enough to its, but I think in general the idea of it was really good. I really liked and I liked the idea of the world that we were creating. I liked that there was an effort to kind of have this like idea of someone being trapped in this house with only like one other person and then us not seeing anyone the rest of the time. I think in practice it kind of made the movie feel very weighed down and slow, and I felt like I was constantly just like sitting in the silence kind of like waiting for things to happen. um but I did like I liked that attempt at like kind of a world building. I wish that it had a little bit more um like depth to it. I wish that there maybe had been, I don't know, something else either to like draw us into Evie as a character so I could really understand like where she was coming from. I felt like I honestly understood Justin as a character. Like Justin was a little bit more like the relatable best friend character, and Evie's motivations to me seemed very muddy throughout. But I did like that we had that world building of this woman who is like isolated in a house, and I do feel like that was done with some care. I think some of the shots were really interesting, like where they were doing a lot of panning. I didn't really like though that none of those pannings ever paid off to a scary moment. It was always just like the panning and then nothing happened, and the panning and then nothing happened. And really the only scare payoff was meant to be the audio. Which again, I think is it's gonna just be tricky to pull off in general because especially if you're not doing something new with it, because it is movies are a visual medium. So the audience is automatically expecting that there's going to be some kind of visual payoff, at least a little bit. I think that we should have had a little bit more of a visual payoff with the end scary scenes. And I know that sounds like I basically said all of the things I liked with huge caveats, but that is also how I felt watching the movie. I didn't hate it. I wasn't in like I wasn't slowly losing my mind like I was in Shelby Oaks, which maybe makes this less of an interesting video. Um but I did like the ideas. I think that there is some potential in like the directing. I was left just feeling kind of like wanting more from it. I think if I had watched this movie in like 2005, my friend and I both said if we'd watched this movie in 2005, I think that it would have been fine. I don't think that we would be as harsh on it, but that is unfortunately 20 years ago at this point. I don't really understand why people keep saying in all of the marketing that this is like the scariest horror you'll ever hear. Like that's what it's marketed as, and all of the reviews are like the scariest horror you'll ever hear. I don't feel like it was scary. I don't feel like it was unsettling. I don't feel like it was even uncomfortable, honestly. Um, and that sounds harsh, but it's just how I feel. This movie, it did a lot of things that we've seen before and didn't even like I feel like if you're going to do things that people have seen before, you either have to know like so intensely like why they do things the way that they've done and then use that to say something new, or you have to present something that is actually new. Like the vehicle through which we are like experiencing the horror then has to be the thing that's new. But in this, the plot was very much reminiscent of something written by a teenager with a Reddit page in the early 2000s, or like a typical, like a very typical horror movie of like pregnant women being targeted by demons and listening to this found footage recording and it like taking over. That's something that we've seen over and over again, and I think the twist was supposed to be that, oh, it's the audio, but again, this is also something that like this has been an urban legend that's been around since before I was born. I feel like I mean, like in the 70s, maybe, like with the Satanic Panic and like listening to rock music backwards, like that was a very big thing at the time. That there were like secret messages hidden in the music corrupting our youth, like it's not an idea that is new in and of itself, right? And listening to music backwards, not an idea that is new, and it's not something that is used in an interesting way. I think, not again to bring it back to The Conjuring, like, oh my god, I love The Conjuring, okay, but that is an example of using found footage and audio that is more innovative, even though it again is maybe a little bit cliche. I think The Conjuring in general, like it kind of gets away with being cliche just because Ed and Warren are a little bit campy. Um, and in the world, it can get away with that, but it does have a really good reveal of an audio um tape, right? Where Ed and Lorraine in the second Conjuring movie, they've been hearing this little girl in a couple of scenes, right, when she's getting possessed, what they think is she's pretending basically, but the old man voice will come out of her mouth and it'll say, don't go, don't go and then or won't go and then me let in something like that. Like it's saying a bunch of words and they don't really mean anything in the context, and it is a little bit unsettling because it's this little girl and it's this creepy man voice. But then later there is like a reveal, right? They're leaving because they think that this little girl has um lied to them and is like staging all of this stuff, and is not really possessed by a demon, and the Warrens only show up if there's a demon involved. Okay, a run of the mill ghost, absolutely not. Okay, demons are their business. And so they're on the train and they're listening, they record things, right? And so they are listening to things, and then they're like, wait a minute, play her something happen, I don't know, something I they they end up playing the little girl's tapes, and they play the man's voice, and they're like, what was he saying? And then they play them on top of each other at the same, like they hold their videotapes together and they play them at the same time. And when they play them at the same time, they get the full message, which is he won't let me go because the demon was keeping the old man ghost and using the old man ghost to possess so it's like a reveal of like, that is what is really happening. And like maybe we as the audience knew, okay, it was going to be a demon because it's the Conjuring, but it's like an interesting way of like, you don't, when you first watch the movie, you don't necessarily click, like you click like, okay, there's something weird going on there with the like words, but you're like, also like demons do just say weird things in these movies. But it ends up kind of like playing into the world and the rules of the Conjuring and how they like collect evidence and use it, right? And it is in a very, it is at least trying to like add something to the plot in a way that is not like used before, like it's not just that they play it backwards, because if they had just thought to play it backwards, it wouldn't have been as good of a reveal, because that is something that we've seen a bunch of times in movies. That was the first time I can recall, at least in a movie, horror movie, kind of seeing that, like them combining them together. Like I'm sure it's happened in other horror movies, but it's not like as, it's not the immediate thing that you would think to do. Like if you have a if you have a ghost tape, what you're immediately going to think to do is either play it backwards or listen really close for creepy whisper voices, because those are the two things that like classically all ghost movies do. You're not going to think like, let me combine these two things together and see what they say. Although now you might, because you might have seen the second Conjuring movie. Um so I think it didn't use the audio in enough of a creative way to justify that being the entire hook of the movie, basically, is what I'm saying. I think I really lost a lot of grace when we pulled out the pregnancy plotline. I think I could have had a lot of grace for this movie if not for that. And so with that, I want to get into what I really did not like about this movie, which I think for me, it comes down to the plot and the characterization. I think kind of, again, honestly, maybe similarly to what I didn't like about Shelby Oaks, and that I think that's part of my frustration too, is like both of these movies are by new people. I don't want to diss people who are new. I know it's hard to make things. I've never made anything a horror movie, so again, what do I know other than just watching them? Um it's very easy to be to critique, um but I think these movies keep being presented to me as something that is revolutionary or like changing the game. And I just don't see how that's true, because I feel like we're using these plots and these ideas from these plots that in some cases that are just frustrating.
This is two movies in a row where Demon Baby has been the major plot line. And to me, that is something that is very concerning, right? Like you have a woman where the major through line of the plot ends up being based on either a woman who is wanting to either a woman who finds a demon baby and wants to keep the demon baby, or a woman who is having a baby, wants to have a baby, and a demon is trying to kill her baby, right? And I find that something that is very worrying, right? Especially in this movie, I don't really understand why the demon plotline was necessary. And when it is not something that is like necessary to the character, I don't think that And when I say that, what I mean is, I don't think it was necessary to Evie's character. I don't think that it was not necessary for her to be pregnant. There could have been a demon that was a mother figure, and so she wanted to have, you know, she is struggling with being a caretaker and like parenting the woman, or like taking care of the woman who was taking care of her, like that kind of dynamic. And so then maybe there's a demon that is like a mother figure, and she wants to, you know, be taken care of, like she's now having to be on her own and taking care of her mother and being very isolated, so she just wants to find something outside of herself to kind of like find that sense of relief. It could have been about her, if she's an alcoholic, it could have been about her spiraling, having to deal with like kind of like being crushed under the weight of not having a social support system and falling back into bad patterns. And then maybe then too, the like lying about seeing the demon and pushing away things and kind of like denying things and hiding things, that also might have tied into that kind of like decline of her character over time. It could have just been a run-of-the-mill demon that just showed up to fuck shit up and make her life miserable while she's already in a really shitty situation. But when you add in, right, that the demon is a demon that causes miscarriages and causes women to go crazy, why are we adding that in there? What does that say? If it's not supposed to be scary to Evie as a character, if it doesn't really make sense and feels like it's something that was just slapped on there, this situation is not scary for, it does not seem like it fits being scary for Evie specifically, because to me it just felt very much like she all of a sudden wanted to be a mother. And even though at various points in the movie she says that she doesn't want to be a mother and is presented as kind of like she could potentially be a bad mother, she's like drinking while she's pregnant and like very much not dealing with a lot of things and doesn't have a support, all of this stuff like is not presented in a very positive light. So it doesn't make sense that it's really scary for her. It's not something that we're seeing her deal with in the plot. So then if it's supposed to be scary for the audience, what does that say? That a demon is scary because it causes women to miscarry and go crazy, and that is the thing that is scary, is this idea of a woman not being a mother, right? Not being in that role in society, or going crazy and causing violence, right? And this is 2 movies now that have presented this idea of women and their function in the narrative being based around pregnancy and babies. And this is not done in a way where it makes sense for the character. It's not done in a way to say anything about that woman in particular. It is just done as a plot device. And this is something that is common in horror, is this idea of this like uncontrollable mad woman. I think that's like why a lot of times you see women who end up getting possessed or going crazy, or even this idea of like, you know, we love a scary old woman. I love a scary old woman in horror movies, but that is also part of where that trope comes from, right? They're like an older woman in society. They don't have that youthful beauty. They don't have the utility of potentially being a mother. And so they function in this different place outside of society, where their main role is to still kind of be that like guiding force of wisdom. But when they can no longer provide that, then they become, or don't provide that for whatever reason, and are outside of that kind of like patriarchal norm, then they become a threat, scary, uncontrollable, something like horrifying, because they don't fit into that idea of like, you know, the virgin or the mother, right? Or the like alluring woman. There's something other. So when you have a movie that is centered around this idea, not only to me is it boring to present the main plot of the movie as this demon that is like wanting to cause women to miscarry, not only is that boring, it's also annoying and infuriating to me. I am so tired of movies presenting this idea that the main characteristic that a woman has is being a mother, being a passive caretaker, and if she doesn't fit into that role, then she is a mad woman. She's going to get possessed. She's going to die violently. She has to be removed from the narrative because she is about to become, because she is a threat. She is broken in some way or less than. And I don't think that these movies were trying to, like, either of the movies that I've critiqued for having this plot line, I don't think that they were intentionally trying to do that. I think that what happens is you take these common tropes in horror of, like, oh, what do demons want? Demons want to kill babies, or, like, possess women who are pregnant, or get a baby, right? Like, that is a very common thing in horror. But I think that when you just take those ideas and stick them in a plot and you don't think about where they came from, why are those things presented as being scary? What about them makes them scary? And you don't clock that and you just put it in your movie, you are unintentionally promoting a narrative that is frustrating and tired and boring and feeds into these norms of what is threatening to a woman and what is threatening to a patriarchal society that only can see her in that passive caretaking role, and what happens when that role is subverted in some way. And it only allows women to function in that very small way in a narrative. And to me, it is just so, I'm honestly at the point where I'm just like, if you are a man and you are directing a movie, I am so sorry, but please, if you're gonna have a demon baby pregnancy plotline, make it a fucking man, okay? Give the demon baby plotline to a man. You want to do a succubus? Lady succubus baby okay, that's worse. That's worse, actually. This is not something that is new. This is not an argument that is new. This is not an idea that is new. This is a trope that is so common. And I think, and it's time to kill the trope. Murder it, okay? Murder it.
I condemn you back to hell!
And it is so frustrating to me that we are constantly presented with this idea that a woman's place in the narrative, like that the thing that is scariest is supposed to be a woman who is not, like, able to be a mother, who didn't want to be one in the first place, and is, like, doesn't convincingly really show, like, why she wants to be a mother, or, like, giving us anything about her relationship with her mother, or anything outside of this. And that is 2 movies in a row where that has happened. And I know, and I'm say that not just to rag on those 2 movies. And when you're pitching to me that these are new voices in horror, that these are people who are have something new to say, but then I watch the movie and they're saying things that I have already heard, you know, like these ideas that are just so tired and just reinforce these things that just suck in this time when things already suck. And I'm allowed to not like it.
That's my opinion!
Like, just stop for a minute and just ask yourself, why am I why has this been a trope in the past? What has it had to say about the people that it's about? A lot of these fears are rooted in, like, fears from norms of marginalized identities, of people not fitting into those things. And I think, like, horror has always been something that can be so subversive and call out those things and question them and make you question, why is this something that people are afraid of? And that's part of why I love it. But you have to ask those questions, and not just in any media that you have. If you're using a trope, the first step is to just ask yourself, why is this a trope? Where did it come from? What does it say? And do some basic horror world building of why this monster, this demon, this ghost, whatever, this entity, whatever you're putting in your movie, why is it scary? Why is it scary for these particular characters? And why is it going to be scary for the audience? And you don't have to have a super deep meaning behind your horror movie, but you want to make sure that whatever you're saying is scary, that it's scary for a reason that makes sense and isn't just, like, relying on a trope that is, like, pulling from this, like, satanic panic of the 70s without having something to say that matters in 2026, right? Like, if nothing you have to say, if it all feels like it's from a different time in a bad way, in a recycled, boring way, then not only are you being annoying, on top of that, you're boring. And at least if you're gonna annoy me, at least be interesting about it. No more demon baby trope. Demon pregnancy?
Cancelled.
Yeah. And if this happens a third time, I'm gonna be the one freeing Shavakadu. Okay, I will need to free Shavakadu in order to cope with that, okay? So I'm just gonna have to sedate me. This movie exhausted me, and I don't know that it's necessarily fair. Okay, I think I was maybe a little bit harsh in the last section, right? Laying all of the faults of demon baby horror trope on free Shavakadu. Okay, I don't think that's fair. I think that this movie's crime, besides demon baby, is also, it just unfortunately wasn't very scary. I think that the horror world building was so extremely lacking, and at times ham-handedly, you know, again, with the flashing of the words on the screen, the same as Shelby Oaks, and this time even more nonsensical words. It was like heinous and sin, you know, literally at one point it flashed to the word sin, and I was just like, I can't believe that I'm watching this right now. Right, like, what is the greatest sin? A woman not being a mother. Let me flash the word sin on the screen, and then a bunch of pictures of women with dead children, right? Like, that's where we're going with it in 2026. Oh my god. Yikes. Yeah, and I think that was the movie's biggest crime, was being boring, being trope heavy, and not being scary. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I would do differently, okay? In this movie, and I've already talked about it a little bit, but Justin would be that demon, okay? Imagine, if you will, we are in the same horror world, okay? Evie in this situation, she would be someone who is isolated. Her mother still dying, still caretaking, but I think that she would have been kind of like isolated in her life in other ways, right? Like, she maybe is having to like take care of people in a lot of other different ways, or like is struggling to just kind of like take care of herself in her own life. And so the only escape that she has from being that caretaker, from being isolated, same as in the movie, is her podcast with Justin, okay? But in this version of the movie, there is no free Shavakadu. There is free Shavakadu, but Justin is free Shavakadu, okay? That is basically how I would pitch the movie would be different. I think showing that isolation, right? Like, showing, I liked the idea of her not leaving the house, right? Of people maybe trying to like, I think in this version I would also have, instead of maybe a shitty, like, why do we have to have a shitty boyfriend? Honestly, what if he is like a good, well-meaning brother? You know, she doesn't need a fucking boyfriend, or a brother, or like a friend, or somebody who is like trying to pull her out of the house, who's trying to say like, hey, maybe I can come over later, and she's like, no. Or, hey, why don't you come out for a little bit? And she's like, no. Or maybe she like convinces herself to go out, and then same thing happens. Her mother like falls or whatever. But like, there are people in her life who are maybe like trying to get her to like leave, or maybe people in her life who are calling her but are trying to ask for other things, right? Very much portraying that she is the caretaker, like, of her friends, or maybe she has a job that is very demanding that she's like had to like take a step back from to take care of her mom. Something to give her a little bit more characterization outside of just, oh my god, depressed woman with a shitty boyfriend who winds up pregnant. Literally anything. I think, give this woman a job. And she has this podcast that she is very passionate about with Justin. And in this, I would highlight that she has never met Justin in person. They met online at in a forum for like spooky things. And then they wound up like getting on a phone call and talking, and really hitting it off, and they made a joke of like, hey, we should start a podcast, and then they start a podcast. So they've never seen each other before. He says he lives in London, suspiciously doesn't have a British accent, as in the movie. And then one day, I think keep the basic plot of the movie the same. You can keep the little audio files in there, but instead of it being a couple like that's losing their mind slowly, I think that it should just be like, I think you maybe could have done like just like a bunch of like hidden messages. Like, I don't know, maybe give her like ciphers or something to figure out, or like she's trying to like you kind of like The Conjuring, like trying to rearrange the words in different ways, or maybe there is like something with the audio that like she really has to dive deep into beyond just like listening to something backwards, right? And so you could have like that audio in there, but I think having it more as like a vehicle of something that she has to really figure out beyond just like listening to something backwards and trying to figure out what they're saying. I think having some kind of like twist in there, like The Conjuring, where it's like, oh my God, then you put them together. I think that is kind of like a classic way to kind of give yourself a like an easy like, ah, yeah, moment for the audience where it like all like clicks together. And then even if it's like somebody figures that out before, they can feel kind of smart of like figuring it out before. Whereas I think in this movie, it was very much handed to us like the solution was just what they already knew it as soon as they were given the audio. They were like, oh, hey, let's flip it backwards and see what happens, because that's what you do with creepy ghost audio, right? So like having it have like an extra layer of some kind, I think would have helped. And I love solving a mystery. I think that adding that as a component, adding the audio in more as something to be figured out, rather than just being backwards. Even if you want to have like them being backwards, maybe it's backwards, but like that does nothing, you know? And so like maybe Justin uses her playing the audio backwards as like, oh yeah, that's what it is. And then it's like, oh, kill, kill, kill. Yeah, that's weird. But really it's like something else underneath, darker. He's trying to get her to listen to this audio, trying to point her towards these things and these ciphers and these codes, slowly driving her to more and more obsession, more and more isolating herself, right? Because she wants to be there. She wants to be listening to it. She wants to be figuring it out. She wants to be talking to Justin, right? And so she's isolating herself more. Her mother, like, and then the one time that she leaves to go visit her friend, not her shitty boyfriend, but her friend is like, I'll come over and I'll like help you out. But maybe her house has gotten really like a disaster because she started like going crazy. So she's like, you can't come in my house. And so she goes out to see her friend just for a little bit because she can't bear being away from the noise. And then she comes back and her mother has fallen because Justin has made her mother fall, because he's like, how dare she leave me and leave my beautiful sounds. Right? Right? And so then you have the reveal at the end, and maybe you think that it's Abazu the whole time. Maybe Justin is like, okay, we're trying to figure out Abazu. We're trying to figure out like how to defeat her, like what happened to her in the past, all this stuff. He's like, we really got to go hard in Abazu. But there's like hints to the audience that like what Evie is seeing and hearing is not necessarily the full thing, right? That she is the type of person that she is not like fully seeing a situation for it is. Maybe her friend even says like, you never see things as they really are. You just see them how you want them to be. You want everything to be an easy mystery to solve. And you want to take care of everything. But sometimes you just have to realize that you don't know what's going on, right? And kind of have that in the background, right? And then at the end, when he's like, listen to this final thing, I think we've cracked it. Like, and they have it all put together and stuff. Like maybe they've like finally like decrypted the audio file or whatever and like figured it all out. And they listen to it. And then, boom, possession. Justin revealed as the demon time. And then, you know, you could have it be the classic, either like she's like fighting against the demon and then gets possessed, or maybe she's like, I want to be isolated. I want to be alone. We can be possessed together. Hot demon boyfriend. That's right. I brought it to back to hot demon boyfriend twice. Because I think that's all you need, right? Hot demon boyfriend. You know, because if you're going to spitball and do a basic plot, and why not give us hot demon boyfriend, you know? I think hot demon boyfriend is better than demon baby. Or time travel. So that is just me being very silly, spitballing what I would do differently. We've talked a lot about this movie, and I think in summary, I did not enjoy this movie. I'm sad I didn't enjoy this movie. I really went into it. I did not go into this movie thinking that I would dislike it. I did not really go into this movie thinking that I would make another video essay. I told my friends, I was like, well, they were like, they said, I hope that you make another rant video. And I was like, I'm hoping that I make a rave review. Right? I'm hoping that I make a follow-up to Shelby Oaks. I'm like, this is how you make a movie on a small budget. But that's not what happened. And that's okay. I appreciate that this horror movie maybe thought that they were going to do something differently. I'm disappointed that it turned out that it was just full of cliches and tropes that I've already seen before, and ones that have unfortunately driven me to the brink of insanity, which probably means that I am going to be possessed by Free Shavakadu, because that is what happens to mad women in horror movies, apparently. I think it's just weird that there's been 2 movies in a row where this has been the major plot line. And like I said, I think I'm gonna do kind of a deeper dive into this demon baby trope in movies. I kind of want to go and read The Exorcist and kind of maybe read some like background literature on things. I don't know when that will come out, if it will ever come out, but I'm putting it out here that if you made it to the end of the movie and that's something that you want to see, or if you have a demon baby movie that you would recommend to me, please put it in the comments, and I read all of my comments and I try to respond to all of them. It makes me so excited when I see a comment and I get to talk to somebody about my feelings, because obviously I love talking about my feelings about things, and I love hearing other people's hot takes about things too, even if I don't agree with them. But yeah, so I hope that if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. If you liked my video, I would I would love it if you would subscribe. And Umber would love it too, because I'm trying to post more things. But that's all. Say bye, Umber.